I never cease to be surprised that even during my third year here in Beijing, there's still no shortage of things to visit and explore in this most fascinating of cities. Never could I have predicted when I first came here that I would still be discovering hidden gems that beg the question of why it took so long for me to discover them in the first place. The Lidai Diwang Miao Temple is one such example. In my opinion, it certainly rivals that must-see tourist attraction known as the Yonghegong Lama Temple that is always filled to capacity with tourists. But this temple is virtually empty, and so much the better for that. I make my way to Fuchengmen Station on Line 2 and leave from the northeast exit, heading in an easterly direction along Fuchengmen A. It's not far to go, but before getting there I pass another temple complex which is heavily closed off to the public with the most amazing white pagoda covered in scaffolding. This is the Miaoying Temple, whose famous white stupa dates back to 1271 in the Yuan dynasty. At 50.9 meters high, it's the largest and one of the oldest dagobas of its kind extant in China. It's one of two famous white dagobas in Beijing, the other one standing in Beihai Park. Miaoyingse, which means Temple of Marvelous Response, was seriously damaged by the Tangshan earthquake in 1976. 15 years earlier, Premier Zhou Enlai had signed a proclamation stating that the temple was to be protected as a national treasure, and it was this proclamation which kept the white stupa safe during the Cultural Revolution. In 1978, the Beijing Department of Cultural Relics undertook the task of repairing and renovating the temple complex. But again, since 2010, the stupa complex has been undergoing yet another renovation, hence the closure. Despite the fact it's been closed for 4 years, this doesn't stop TravelChinaGuides.com from informing us that admission hours are from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with an admission fee of 20 RMB. At least they managed to update their web page to show that their copyright runs from 1998 to 2014, even if they couldn't manage something as basic as a total closure of the featured site 4 years after the gates had been locked shut to visitors. But as I say, I haven't come here for this. Instead, I head on a further 200 meters to the Lidai Diwang Miao, a royal temple used to worship past emperors. Built in the 16th century in the place of a former Buddhist temple, it served as a place where reigning emperors could visit and pay homage to previous emperors. Actually, it was more usually their representatives who diligently carried out sacrifices in spring and autumn, although Emperor Yongjung, who killed his brother in order to grab the throne for himself, made 5 appearances here during his short tenure in power. On both sides of the main entrance there are memorial steels, written in Chinese, Mongolian and Tibetan, which read, "Officials must dismount here." Lidai Diwang Miao was built on the grounds of a former Buddhist temple, Bawan Se, some 485 years ago. The emperor worship came to an end with the fall of the Qing dynasty, when the complex was used for school buildings before it opened to the public in 2004 after undergoing a $36 million restoration. I pay my 20 kuai and step through the portal into an amazing courtyard. Everywhere, with one major exception, there are explanatory notices in both Chinese and English. An excellent job has been done in explaining what the curious visitor might want to know. Apart from the main map, there's also a simple model showing the layout of the complex for those who can only think in 3D. Within the first courtyard is the very impressive Jingde Gate, originally built in 1530. It's 26.6 meters wide and 14.8 meters high, and is surrounded by a white marble guardrail. 3 flights of steps lead up to it, with a railed-off path on which there is a design of clouds and hills. Another gorgeous yard lies ahead, with pride of place going to the Jingde Chongsheng Palace, which was also built in 1530, but rebuilt during the Yongzheng and Qianlong periods, when the gold and dragons were repainted and the yellow-coloured glazed tile roof was replaced. The inside is 9 rooms wide and 5 rooms deep, and here are located 188 tablets of the emperors who were worshipped in the hall. The original wooden tablets of the past emperors were smashed during the Cultural Revolution, something that has not been translated into English. Heaven forbid that foreigners might learn that the Chinese, so good at complaining about the damage that foreign troops inflicted on the likes of the Yuan, were just as good at inflicting mindless destruction on themselves. Their replacements look anything but authentic. One of the most impressive features of this place is the stone steels that are positioned to the east and west of the main hall. The one to the east, for instance, was first erected in 1733 in the Yonghegong period of the Qing dynasty. On one side it has inscriptions in both Manchu and Chinese, whilst on the other side is an inscription in just Chinese, which was added 52 years later in Emperor Qianlong's rule. Hence this stele is referred to as the father and son. At 7.53 meters high, it's quite some beast, and you can imagine the poor peasants who had to move the bloody thing, wishing the emperors didn't have such incredible egos. The stele itself stands on the usual turtle, which represents longevity. I guess it worked in this particular case. Outside, bits of restoration continue at a desultory pace. Well, it is a hot day, I suppose. Close by is the East Liao Lu furnace, which again was originally built in 1530. It's made up of green glaze and was used to burn the paper or silk prayers which were offered for sacrifice to the old emperors, whose tablets appear in the imperial temple. The furnace was rebuilt in 2004. There's also something called the Well Pavilion, which was used to make sacrificial soup and to clean up after the animals were slaughtered for sacrifice. According to the notice board there, the roof has a round hole in its centre facing the mouth of the well, symbolizing that heaven and earth are linked together. I wander over to have a look, and wonder if there's confusion in translation of the word round, or perhaps the hole has just squared off over the years. In keeping with all the other buildings, the bell tower was where the sacrificial bell was hung. Well, I guess that makes sense. It's all very picturesque. Less picturesque, though, is a collection of notice boards stuck up against the eastern wall. One poster summed it all up for me. Outside the main entrance, there were originally 3 marble bridges and a spectacular pailot, or wooden memorial gate. You can see from the pictures that it was quite something. But the city planners decided that the pailot got in the way of the traffic, so in 1953 and 54 they were demolished. And so ended 450 years of history at a stroke.